we spoke in other podcasts about how the social hierarchy can be a bad thing because where are we? We're, with our place in the social hierarchy, we're either more dominant than someone or we're more submissive than someone, and both have their
Well,
negative.
let's use superior and inferior in better terms.
Okay, superior and inferior. That's what I meant. Yeah, and I think there's weight to that, but I also think that it's in our biology that we get a lot of joy out of it, and like I guess I want to ask, like, generally speaking, do you think status is like a good thing that people should aim for? Because I like in the first glance, I see status as this capitalist guy that thinks he's better than everyone. But there's also different. There's loads. Status is very, very broad. It's like a hyper desire that we all want because you get it from your intelligence, you get it from how many friends you have, you get it from being good at something, and I don't think all of that is bad. And I think that the fact that it gives us so much serotonin and it makes us feel good, especially in a male perspective, like I feel like there are some good things about status as well.
Okay, this is a fucking great question, Jake. And I've had many thoughts pinging around my head as you've been saying that. So I'm going to try and lay them out in a clear, articulated way. I think the answer all depends on the extent that you're possessed by your ego. Because let's say if I'm completely like hung up on the idea of Joel Clifton in the social hierarchy, right? And all my emotions are like tied to where he is in that hierarchy, i.e. what other people think of him, then my emotions are going to get swayed in all kinds of places, whether I'm inferior or superior to another person. If I'm inferior, I'm going to feel insecure, low self-esteem, unconfident. That's not good. That's depression. That's anxiety. Those emotions, those mental states are there to show us that we're lower in the social hierarchy than we'd like to be, right? But in the other case, if I'm superior to someone, then I can become arrogant, ignorant, just spiteful and horrible to be around, too ego possessed, and then you become blind, and then the world just slaps you down when you weren't looking. But there is a place you can get to where there isn't possession by the ego, and you build competence in the hierarchy, but you don't use it as a weapon against others. It makes me think about in Peterson's biblical lectures, he talked about this line in the Bible where it said, "The meek shall inherit the earth." And meek, to us, I think, in layman's society, like in layman's terms, meek sounds like kind of weak, wimpy, like a little bit afraid, a little bit sort of lack of backbone. And Peterson was like, no, that can't be it. So he looked into like the deep-rooted etymology of that word and perhaps what the author was trying to communicate with that word. And he said it was something along the lines of having a great weapon and keeping it sheathed, having a great sword but keeping it sheathed, right? That's what meek meant, really, in that. So the meek will inherit the earth really means the person who has the power and the mighty sword but keeps it sheathed will inherit the earth. And that, to me, I think of all the people that have great competence and great status in the hierarchy, but they don't use it to feed their ego. They instead use it for the betterment of themselves and others and their loved ones and the wider community. That's the difference of, like, I don't know, and I just have to put it in my own real world terms so it makes sense. If I'm playing in a scrimmage and I know that I'm the best player there, right? If I wanted to use that superiority and just like drive people 1v1 and make layups, what am I getting out of that? I'm just feeding my ego, and everyone around me is just getting like crushed by that. And there's just no point. It's just a terrible, toxic environment. But instead, if I use it as an opportunity to help people develop areas of their game, that's having the sword but keeping it sheathed. Like that's right. I am rising. I am one of the highest in the social hierarchy in that environment, but I'm not inflicting like that on others in a painful way. Does that make sense?
That's such a good answer. And I think I've got a similar answer, but from a very different context. Generally, I also wanted to add that I think status is important because it's a big part of who we choose to spend our time with, maybe. Like, yeah. I want to hang with men that are also high status, that are also very good at something, that are also on the same kind of wavelength, if not above me. So the answer that I came to was very inspired by this. I was listening to an Alan Watts lecture, and Alan Watts was telling a story about the last time that he met Carl Jung. And so they're both in Carl Jung's house, and they're sort of walking about. He's got this really nice house, and he's looking into the lake. And they were talking about swans, and Alan Watts says, "Is it true that swans are monogamous?" And then Jung says, "Oh yes, that's a funny thing about their mating. For the first time, It begins where they're like competing over women, and they're basically fighting. The swans all fight until they discover what they're supposed to be doing, and then and then Young says, "This the swans have been great for the swans have been great for helping out some of my female homosexual patients," and I think this. Yeah, then Alan Watts says some other things in his lecture when he's like, I was very impressed by what Young said, by his sort of his warmth and his fun, and but also the intelligence of what he was saying, and essentially what that means is we're all competing like the swans for status until we settle, and then we realize what really matters. So it's almost like as men we're all competing to get the financial, the kind of the comfortable, we're trying to get the girl, we're trying to get the house, and we're trying to get comfortable and develop as resourceful and competent men. Once we've got that, then we kind of settle and we're fine with it, and we then focus on just our relationships and living the good lifestyle and improving, like especially when we have kids as well. When we've got family, do we really care about status? I don't think so. I think we're just we are still that person. We still have that level of like competence or whatever it is, or intelligence or whatever it is, but our priorities are different. And so I think when you say the meek show inherent earth and the kind of what was it, the sword and the sheath, it's like we are still that person, but we're not acting it out anymore. We're on to better things with it. So
yeah, maybe it comes back to Jung's analogy of the two phases of life and the cycle of the sun during the day. So when you're in the morning of life and you feel like you need to validate your ego in the world, status matters. Getting good at stuff in the world, competing, beating other people matters, because if you're ahead of others, then you're going to get the best job, or you're going to have the best lifestyle, and you're going to meet a great girl, and you're going to settle down and have kids, or whatever. But then the afternoon of life is almost an unwiring of all of that, realizing that chase was not what it seemed, and your ego is no longer what you should feed. You should feed a sense of inner being and cultivate a deeper meaning for life and a deeper part of yourself. Very true, I think. It'll be so much easier to not get competitive, I think, when I'm like in my granddad era, because what's the point? Like I was saying to my friend the other day, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, like you'll agree with me on this, Jake, because maybe shows us a difference in our temperament, but I long for the days where my fighting in life is over. I long for the days where like I'm financially secure, I've got children that maybe are older and they've got grandchildren, and I can just spend my days listening to the birds, reading, writing, sipping coffee, making food, spending time with my wife, enjoying the garden. I long for those days, because it's always like there's a fuck you to the world. You are like the way my granddad lives. It's just like it's peaceful peace.
Yeah, when you complete the game and you're just like fulfilled for the last 20 years of your life.
It's like in Pokemon where you beat the final four and like the final guy, whatever his name is, and then your Pokemon are all like level 40, but they can go up to level 100, and then it unlocks a whole nother area of the map. I don't know if you played like Pokemon as a kid on the Nintendo, but it is like that.